Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with all of you my June roundup. So this is basically updated impressions of all of the new products that I tried in June. I have some favorites and some fails in today's video. And also because I didn't get around to filming a May roundup, this also doubles as my May roundup. There are lots of products to talk about today, so I'll be doing a full face of makeup and talking you through all of these updated impressions. So without further ado, let's dive into today's look. So to start off, I already prepped my skin with some primer. I'm actually using this primer, which is not part of this month's video, but is going to be in an upcoming video about K-beauty brands. So if you're interested in Korean beauty, definitely stay tuned. But I put this hydrating primer on today because I wanted to start off with the Yensa Super Serum Silk Foundation. I have this in the shade medium. And if you guys watched my recent trying new makeup video on, you know that this didn't quite work for me upon initial impression. It was definitely a little bit too drying on my dry skin. But in that video, it was hard for me to tell if the problem was this product or the powder that I used on top of it. And so today I'm going to be experimenting a little bit more. I'm going to use this foundation again, and then on half of my face I'm going to use the same powder that I used last time, but I do have that hydrating base on today. So to blend this in, I'm going to go in with my BK Beauty 101 brush. This is one of the new products that I tried out recently. I bought this and also BK Beauty's 107 brush, and I've been loving both of these brushes since I picked them up. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know that by and large, I'm not a huge synthetic brush fan. Generally, I pretty much exclusively use Japanese fude brushes that are made out of goat or squirrel hair, but I've been really loving these face brushes from BK Beauty. The fact that they're synthetic is quite nice in that it means it's easy for me to wash these and I don't really have to worry about the washing harming the brushes as much. Also for this brush in particular, I really like this angle that it has. It makes it really easy and comfortable to apply foundation in downward sweeping motions instead of having to do it at a right angle. Also, this brush is just super dense, and so it doesn't absorb a ton of product and leaves a very seamless finish. So you can see I basically just blended in the product. I didn't really buff anything, and it's already looking very seamless on the skin. Interestingly, I will say it's looking very glowy as well. And again, like I mentioned at the top, the problem I had with this foundation the first time I used it was it ended up being too drying on my skin. So right now though, it's looking very glowy. So I don't know if that's just because of the primer I put down or this product itself, but we'll definitely let this settle in a bit to the skin. And like I said, I'll powder half of it and see how much of a difference that makes. Before we powder though, let's go in with some cream face products. So one of my favorites for this month was the new Charlotte Tilbury Cream Bronzer. This for me was a major surprise because I don't actually like cream bronzers. This is pretty much one of the first ones I've tried that I've actually enjoyed, and I actually like this one quite a bit. So I'm going to go in with that BK 107, which is a really great brush for applying this product. The shape of the brush is just perfect for getting into the contours of your cheeks and also deposits a light amount of product, so it's really easy to build up gradually. But what I really like about this product is, unlike most cream bronzers, it's not actually that creamy. It has almost more of a powdery finish in effect, which means that it's not going to be slipping and sliding around your face like sometimes I find with cream bronzers. And also for me, this is just the easiest, most foolproof cream bronzer I've tried in terms of applying without patchiness. Usually I find with cream bronzers, the creaminess means that it applies in sort of a thick layer and then you have to buff it out on your skin. Whereas as you can see for this one, I'm just basically dabbing it onto my skin, no blending required. I just stipple it on, and because it's light, powder-like layers, it just sort of blends in without any issue. So as you can see, that just left a really nice, pretty natural finish. You don't see where the bronzer starts or stops, and it just gives an overall very healthy look. Moving right along, another favorite I have this month is this cream blush from Nudestix. This is actually my first time trying Nudestix, even though they were basically one of the OG cream blushes, and I can see why they are so popular. So this has become one of my favorite everyday go-to cream blushes. If I'm doing a no makeup look, I don't really have a full base or anything, I basically just swipe this on and blend it in, and I find that it looks just very nice and natural on the skin. Today I'm going to go in with this brush just because we are doing this as part of a full face. But as you can see, this product has a really nice, dewy, healthy finish to it. This color is really pretty, especially for the spring and summer months. It has a really nice peachy, pinky glow to it. And so I find this just very easy to use and very flattering on my skin tone. And this is in the shade Sweet Cheeks. I think this might be a limited edition sort of influencer collab shade, but the formula itself is really nice. And I find that even though this has a bit of a glowy, dewy finish, it's not a magnet for my hair, which is my big pet peeve with cream blushes. As you guys can tell, I have a lot of hair. I don't do much with my hair, and so it's often just flying in my face. But I find that this product, once it dries down a little bit, does not cause my hair to constantly stick to it. But there we go. So really nice blushing cheeks. I kind of went a little heavy-handed today just to show you guys the shade. But I can definitely understand now the original hype around Nudestix. On the other side of my face, I'm going to go in with this other cream blush. This is from Keys, which is Alicia Keys' new beauty brand. This is her cream blush in the shade Grace. So this is a little bit cooler toned than the Nudestix shade, but still a really beautiful pinky tone. And I'm just going to go in with this BK Beauty 101 brush since I need to wash this anyway, and just dab this onto the other cheek. This is also just a really beautiful, very easy to use, quite pigmented. I mean, it's a little bit hard to tell since I'm applying this with the foundation brush, but it is actually quite a pigmented product. And as you see, it just blends very seamlessly into the skin, leaves a really nice, bright, healthy color. This one has a little bit more plumminess to it. It's slightly less glowy and dewy than the Nudestix, but it still leaves a pretty healthy sheen to the skin. This is also typically a product that I use not so much on glam days, but just on everyday makeup days. But as you can see, it still blends really nicely on top of that foundation. So now that we have my cheeks very nicely hydrated with all these products, I think we do need some setting powder. So I'm gonna go in now with the Kimchi Chic Puff Puff Pass setting powder. And again, the first time I used this was also in conjunction with that Yensa foundation, and I found that the combo was just way too drying on my skin. So today, at least to start, I'm just gonna powder one half of my face and leave the other half. But given how glowy things are looking right now, I feel like I will probably powder the other half as well. So I just took out a little bit of that powder, and this comes with a nice little powder puff as well, which is quite helpful. So let's just put some of, whew, okay. The powder puff actually picked up a lot of product. Let me, whew. Okay, I don't know. If you guys have any tips on how to properly use this powder puff, let me know. I feel like I'm getting a lot of powder in the air right now. But definitely this kills any shine, as you guys can see. Ooh, that really took down just all the shine. Powder puff is quite big as well, so if you have a somewhat small face like myself, you might find yourself putting on a bit more powder than you anticipated. Okay, there we go. So I think you can see a very big difference. Just look how mattified this side of my face looks in comparison to this side. So this powder is definitely very effective. I would highly recommend this to anyone who has oily skin. For myself, we'll see how this is faring. Like I said, it was a little bit too drying for me last time. Hopefully this time, because I had that hydrating primer, it's not too drying for me. So I went off camera to do my brows because I don't have new brow products from the past 2 months. But in case you're curious, basically today I am doing some further testing of 2 Korean makeup brands for my brows. So definitely subscribe down below if you are interested in that forthcoming video. One brow product I will briefly mention though is I have been loving this Merit Beauty brow gel. This has basically shot up to be my #1 brow gel and has stayed there over the past several months. So if you're looking for a really great everyday brow gel, I would highly recommend this. This formula is thin enough that you'll never get clumpiness or too much pigmentation in any part of your brows, but it's also super buildable, and so I just find it on a daily basis super easy and fuss-free to use. Now to continue this look, I realized I forgot to put on concealer, so let's actually go in with this Benefit Boi-ing concealer. I have this in the shade Fly High, and this actually for me has been a fail this month. So for me, this looks pretty good when I first apply it. I find that it's a pretty high coverage concealer and doesn't have a ton of creasing when I first apply it. But the problem for me is it's just way too drying on my skin. And for context, in case you're new to my channel, I do have dry skin, so I think this might work well if you have more oily or even normal skin. But on me, after a few hours, this just ends up making my under eye area look really desiccated, and so unfortunately, I'm not a fan. But yeah, so here we have it on the under eyes. Like I said, looking pretty good right now, but just based on the last few times I used it, I don't have very high hopes for how this is gonna wear. Now going into the eye makeup, I'm gonna first go in with this ABH eye primer. This has been basically my favorite eye primer ever since I picked this up. I've talked about this in a lot of my videos at this point, so you guys are probably tired of hearing of this. But for me, this is just the only eye primer I've ever used that doesn't make it quite difficult to blend out matte shadows in my crease area. For me, I often feel like I either have to choose between using a concealer that will make it super easy for me to blend out my mattes versus using an eye primer that will help grip onto my shimmers a bit more. But I feel like this primer is that happy medium that is not super grippy on the shimmers, so definitely if you have a very flaky eyeshadow, I would recommend going in with another primer. But if you have sort of a normal shimmer and you have mattes that you really want to make sure blend out easily, then this is a really great primer to check out. So for today's eyeshadow look, I'm going to go in with this Jubilee palette from Natasha Denona. This is a palette that I got in my recent Ipsy bag, and I think you can only get this through subscription services like Ipsy, BoxyCharm, those places. So that's why I didn't feature this in a standalone video. But I've actually been really enjoying this palette. And so if you guys subscribe to some beauty subscription service and this ends up being one of your options to pick from, I would recommend picking this up. The quality of this palette is consistent with other Natasha Denona palettes, so it's really great quality, and this color story is also quite fun. I'll put up some pictures here of looks that I did using all of the shades in the palette. There's pretty much one look that I typically do with this palette, but today I want to do something slightly more subdued, so I'm probably not going to go into this turquoise shade here, which really packs a punch in terms of pigment. So to start off this look, I'm going to go in with this Rephr number 27 brush into this more neutral tan shade. And this Rephr brush is a new brush to my collection that I picked up in Rephr's recent sale. It feels like it's been a long time already since that sale, but since I didn't do my March roundup, we're talking about this here. So I picked up a bunch of Rephr brushes in that sale, including this guy. I wanted to basically try out all of their eyeshadow brushes, which at this point I do have all of their eye brushes. So if you guys are interested in a video dedicated to that, definitely let me know. But this is a really nice, large, fluffy crease brush. I also really love the Rephr number 16 brush. I think it's a good dupe for the Boi-ing number 16, which is my overall favorite crease brush. But this one is just slightly larger and fluffier, and so it's good for just a very diffused look on the crease. Definitely you can't do any detail work with this brush, but for a transition shade like this one over here, it makes really quick work out of just blending that all over the crease area. Next up, I'm going to go in with this Rephr number 28 brush. This is also a new brush that I picked up in that Rephr haul. And this is a really nice all-over shader brush. As you can see, it really picks up quite a bit of pigment and lays it down quite smoothly. I previously picked up the Rephr number 21 brush, which has orange fibers, and that one I find is a little bit better as a lip brush. It's a little bit thinner and less soft than this one. And so if you're debating between the two, I would recommend the 28 more so for the eye area. Next, I'm going to go in with my Esam W21 brush. This is a sable hair brush, and I'm going to go into this shimmer shade over here. This brush is a lot stiffer than the Rephr number 28 that I just used, but it's still quite nice on the eyes. I actually like this brush a lot for the lower lash line because I find the stiffness is quite good for more precise work on the lower lash line. So we'll also use it for that today. Okay, that's giving me a very soft wash. Usually when I use this palette, I just go in with my fingers into the shimmer shade, and I find with that I do get a much greater pigment payoff for this turquoise shade. So this brush is definitely laying things down in a more sheer layer. Okay, yeah, let me actually go in with a finger and just, yeah, there we go. I think you can see that definitely gave more of a punch. This shade is a tad bit flaky, so using a finger I think is quite helpful for just really packing it on. There we go. So now I'm just going to use this brush to kind of zhuzh everything together. Next up with the Boi-ing number 7 brush. This is from his Edit series. It's such a cute little brush that kind of looks like a calligraphy brush. I'm going to go back into that original matte and just kind of add that back into the outer portion of the eyes. Then also sweep some of that on the lower lash line. This is a really great brush for that lower lash line area, and also is quite good for the outer crease. And actually, just because I'm curious how it'll look, let me take some of this pink as well and just kind of put it in the outer corner. Usually this is where I would put that deeper shade, but I'm trying to keep this look a little bit more bright and summery, and I find whenever I use this shade it does sort of dominate the look. Yeah, okay, I'm liking how that looks. It's kind of fun. It brings in a little bit of a pop of color. And for the lower lash line, I'm gonna use the side of this Rephr number 28 brush and just sweep this on the outer portion of the lower lash line. And this is something that I really like to use these flatter shader brushes for. I think the side of them is very nicely precise for that lower lash line work. Similarly, I'm going to take that Esam brush into this yellow shade and run that along the inner portion. And then just a tiny bit of this shade as well to kind of mimic what we have on the top. So here we are, overall pretty fun summery eyeshadow look. And so for eyeliner now, I'm going to first go into these eyeliners from ColourPop. So I picked up a bunch of their Crème gel liners since I've been intrigued about these trends with really colorful eyeliners. It's something I don't normally do, but I thought it'd be fun to pick this up since it's a really affordable set and you get so many different colors. And so let's see, for today's look, what kind of liner do I want to do? I could either go more kind of turquoise to match the blue, or I could go a little bit more purpley burgundy. Let's see, I wish you guys could vote live and tell me which direction to go into, but let's maybe try this burgundy. I still haven't tried this shade before and it looks really pretty. So this is called Joyride. And I'm just gonna start with a little bit of this along the lash line, just to see how I like that shade. Okay, I think that'll work with this look, hopefully. I'm usually not a huge fan of cream eyeliners because I find that they do take a bit of building up on the lid in order to really see them. And for me, that's not the most comfortable experience, but at least these ColourPop ones are pretty creamy overall. Okay, there we go. That's looking pretty good. I'll also just run this along the outer portion of my waterline. Okay, that bled a little bit, so let me just blend that. So I went off camera to do the other eye, and here's how it's looking with that liner on both sides. And I'm actually quite digging it. I think it added a nice degree of depth to the look. This is not the kind of eyeliner you want to use if you're avoiding that sort of slightly pink eye, sort of reddish look around your eyes, but I like it. I think especially it contrasts nicely with that turquoisey light frosty shade. So pretty fun so far. I'm also going to go in now with the shade Honeydude. I actually bought this separately from the rest of the kit because I needed to get that free shipping. But I'm going to just sweep this on the inner portion to just add a little bit of light. Okay, there we go. So that's, I think, pretty subtle. I like that this shade is sort of like a skin tone shade, so it doesn't really look like you have a really bright white shiny liner in your waterline. It just sort of adds a little bit of brightness there. So next up, I was gonna put on some of this Hindash liner, but I actually feel like I really like just having that burgundy eyeliner by itself. So let me just briefly talk about this. So I've been using this eyeliner for a while, and overall my first impressions were quite good. It has a nice small brush tip, so I found it pretty easy to use at the beginning. But my overall verdict now that I've used this for several months is it's really not my favorite eyeliner. I find that for some reason it's a little bit hard for me to control it. I think it's just because the bristles are somewhat soft, and so I find it's really easy for it to accidentally flick in the wrong direction, and then I kind of have to make my wing bigger and bigger to accommodate. And so I just wanted to give you guys that quick update. Other than that, I like the opacity of this liner. I like the texture of it. I like that it dries not too shiny, but I just feel like I don't have enough control with this liner compared to some of my other eyeliners. So before we get into the next step, which is powder blush, I do think I need to set some of this because it's still looking very dewy. I mean, definitely the foundation has settled a little bit in comparison to when I first started this video, but I feel like it's still way too glowy on this side for me to apply any products on top. So what I'm going to try to do is go in with a powder brush instead of using this puff and see how that goes. So I'm going to go in with this Rephr number 19 brush, which is also one of the new Rephr brushes that I picked up. And hopefully this allows me to just pick up a smaller amount of powder, because I think as you guys saw on this side with the puff, I just feel like a lot of product got deposited, and this side definitely is still looking super matte, a bit more matte than I would normally go for. So hopefully this brush just gives me a bit more control. And I have been enjoying this Rephr brush so far. I think this tip especially makes it good if you want to get into that under eye area. I also actually picked up the Rephr number 18 brush as well. I spent a lot of time looking at their website debating between these two because they look quite similar. So if you're curious, this is what they look like in person. The 19 is bigger and has this little point, whereas the 18 is a little bit more like a cotton ball shape. So I'd say this one is better if you want a brush that maybe is more so for blush and maybe a little bit of highlight, whereas this one is better for powder and also just for more targeted placement with that tip. But just to illustrate both of them, let me go in now with the 18 and just use this to powder down this blush area. I mean, you can definitely see that this Kimchi powder is very effective. Like, you can instantly see it taking down the shine. For better or worse. I hope this doesn't make my skin really dry later on, but at the moment, I'm really liking how it just cuts that shine back. So now that we're nicely mattified, let's go into powder blush, specifically the Pat McGrath Divine Blush Duo in Venusian Sunrise. And so to apply this blush, I'm going to go in with my Hinoki brush from Sonia G. This is the larger one. And I've been really liking this Hinoki series. Actually, especially I've been really liking the smaller brush. This has become my go-to under eye powder brush. It's basically the perfect shape to get into that under eye area. And these brushes are also extremely soft, some of the softest brushes in my collection. This larger one is a little bit more versatile, but it's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. So if you want more of a multi-purpose brush, this larger one is really great, but it's still not my favorite brush for any particular task. That said, these both are very beautiful brushes, so for me, these are a welcome addition to my collection just from an aesthetic perspective. So today I'm just going to kind of go in with both sides of this blush. If you want to see how they look individually, definitely check out my video dedicated to this product. In that video, I also demo the Paradise Glow version of this blush, but I actually ended up returning that because it was just way too similar to Paradise Venus, Desert Orchid, and Nude Venus, all of which are blushes from Pat McGrath that I already own. And so if you own any of those blushes already, I think Paradise Glow is going to be a bit redundant in your collection. If you don't own any of those, if you really haven't tried Pat McGrath's collection before, I would highly recommend the Paradise Glow shade. It basically incorporates a few of my favorite shades from Pat McGrath in one convenient set. But for me, I just really couldn't justify keeping it. Whereas this shade over here is much, much more unique in my collection. I don't really have any shade actually that has quite this level of lavender coolness to it. I mean, it's a little bit, let me actually cut down the brightness. I feel like I'm getting really washed out right now. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Maybe actually, let me cut it down a little more. There you go. Okay, so I think you can see that color now. Like I said, I'm swirling together today both of these shades, but hopefully you can still see the contribution of that lavender shade. It is very cool toned, but I think it's really pretty on the cheeks, especially for more of the warmer months, because it adds that additional layer of interest because it's like almost sort of like a purpliness sort of peeking through. But yeah, I have been enjoying this blush, and in case you're new to my channel, I absolutely love Pat McGrath's blush formula. It's basically one of my overall favorite blush formulations, and in particular I really like the lighter shades that she has. I find that if you're sort of a light to medium skin tone, it's probably better for you to go with some of her lighter shades, whereas above that the deeper shades are much easier. Basically, some of the characteristics of her formula are that they are pretty long lasting on the skin, which is overall a great thing, but I'll put up a picture of myself wearing the Paradise Glow blush and you'll see that it kind of, you can sort of see the boundaries of the blush pretty clearly, and that's because some of the deeper shades like the Paradise Venus shade or like the Rose shade in Paradise Glow, I think those are basically the same shade, by the way. That kind of deeper shade will tend to cling to your cheeks and then you sort of need to blend it out. Whereas as you could see from my application of Venusian Sunrise today, I'm just tapping it in. I haven't done any swirling or buffing with this formula. And so for me personally, with my skin tone, even though I'm on the medium side, I do prefer the formulation of the lighter blushes just because I find they're more foolproof. So now let's go into some highlighter. So I don't have a new highlighter for this month, so I figured I would just go into Venus Nectar from Pat McGrath since she recently re-released this in a single. So I'm gonna go in with the Hinoki brush and just lightly tap since this is quite a loosely pressed highlight. A little bit goes a long way. And I also do love using the Hinoki brush for this use case. It's very, very soft on the cheeks and just really does a good job of depositing that pigment. So hopefully you guys can see that subtle glow. And then on the other cheek, I'm actually going to go in with my Rephr number 20 brush because I've been really loving this brush for highlight ever since I picked it up. It's really nice, especially if you want to do something like nose highlighting. It's also really beautiful on the cheeks as well. So if you're looking for a new highlighter brush, I would recommend checking this out. This is my first time actually using a fan brush, and I never really understood why people liked them. But now that I've tried this, I really like this application. It's very nice, very ethereal, and again, you can get into smaller areas as well. And actually, in the process of highlighting my nose, I realized I once again forgot nose contour. So let's try to just put a little bit of nose contour on, going back into that Charlotte Tilbury bronzer. I'm just going to use this jumbo blender from Sonia G. This is from her Keyaki set. And this Keyaki set is actually also a major favorite of mine over the past couple months. I have started doing a bit of travel again, and in the process I've come to really appreciate this Keyaki set. I'll hold it up for you guys in a moment, but basically the set contains all of the brushes you would need for a basic makeup look, and it's so compact, and the brushes are very high quality. The bristles are super soft, and so if you like using Fude brushes, especially if you like using Sonia G brushes, but you don't want to carry a bunch of brushes around with you when you're traveling, this is a really great investment into just a really nice, very multifunctional set. And as I'm doing this, I think you can also just see how easy to use this bronzer is. Like, usually I'm a little bit scared of using cream bronzers for nose contour because they can sometimes leave a big streak, and then that's very difficult and unnatural to blend out. But that just added a tiny hint of contour. And here is the full Keyaki set in case you guys are curious, and I also featured this in my travel makeup bag video, so if you want to see these brushes in action, definitely check out that video. Alright, so that is basically all of my June and May roundup. But remarkably, there are no lip products in this roundup. And so I thought it would be fun today to just go in with this sample of the Armani Lip Power and try this on with you guys. So there's 3 little shades here, and it also actually comes with a little brush, which I think is super cute. Let me actually give you guys a bit of a close-up. And the reason I was really intrigued by this is if you guys, like me, are fans of Michelle Wong's videos on YouTube, she has been raving about this product so much all year, and I have yet to try it. And so I thought it would be fun to try it on today. Here's the little lip brush. I think it's pretty nice that they thought to include something like this, given that it's always really hard to use these sorts of samples. So let me start from the lightest shade and go to the deepest shade. So, oh wow, so it's a very soft formula. Just when I dug my brush in a little bit, it disturbed the surface quite a lot. So let's put this first one on. And this first shade is called Selfless 104. So let's put this on. Okay, this is very similar to my natural lip shade. This brush though is not, it's very pokey. I feel like it's not actually helping that much. Let me actually just switch over to using a finger. This is very creamy though. So that does feel very comfortable on the lips. I feel like this shade actually maybe with a deeper lip line would match with this look quite well. So it's sort of, on my lips at least, quite pinky, almost a tad bit mauvey, which I think matches well with the blush. The formulation definitely feels really comfortable though, so I can understand where she's coming from a comfort perspective. And actually, while I'm at it, let me also give you guys a swatch of this here. So you can see that it's not necessarily full pigment with one layer. You do need to build it up a little bit, but it is very, very comfortable. So here is Selfless 104. All right, so that was also very easy to remove. So now let's go into this next shade, which is called 400. Whoa. Okay, this one is way more pigmented. Interesting. So the formulation is not totally the same across all of them. This is full pigment in one swipe. For this one, actually having a good lip brush would be handy. Okay, so here is like a light layer of it, and let me also just give you guys a swatch. This one is definitely a true red, but sheared out has a slightly berry tone to it. I would say compared to the first one, it is slightly less creamy and emollient on the lips, but it is still very comfortable, and I'm very impressed with the level of pigment that we're getting. So if you want something that's more full Hollywood glam, I think this shade 400 is quite nice. I like that even though it's quite a hydrating formula, you still get good opacity. I think for these sorts of shades, opacity is quite useful because otherwise they can look quite patchy on the lips. But this looks quite nice even though I just applied it with my finger. All right, so I tried to take that shade off. It does stain a little bit, as you guys can see on my finger, but hopefully this next shade can just easily cover that up. So this one is called Flirt 504. I would say this one feels a lot more like the first one in terms of just how creamy and emollient it is. Even though it's deeper than the middle one, it's slightly less pigmented. But this is a really nice shade. I'm glad I'm ending with this actually. I will probably just keep this one on my lips. So here it is swatched. I think you can see that it is slightly less opaque than that second one. And let me actually clean off this little brush and try to see if I can use this to just refine the edges a bit, because I do want this to be the final look. But we're definitely getting a little bit of influence from that second shade. All right, so here we have the final look with 504 Flirt. And I would say in terms of my initial impressions of these Armani Lip Powers, it does feel really, really comfortable on the lips, so that's quite promising. For me, that is a huge, huge factor. I basically can't wear matte lipsticks, and for the most part, I only wear lip glosses on an everyday basis. So it's really nice that this feels basically like a very hydrating lip mask. Of course, I'll have to see how this wears throughout the day, but if it wears pretty nicely, I might have to pick one of these up during the Sephora VIB sale. So just wanted to pop by for a quick wear test update. It's been around 7 hours since I first applied this makeup, and overall it's looking pretty good. So I would say that the foundation this time combined with the powder has definitely performed quite differently than the first time. Having that hydrating base underneath has kept things looking pretty hydrated. I don't see any dry patches. If anything, I feel like I look a little bit greasy in the center of my face. So I'll have to keep updating you guys in terms of this foundation and powder, especially using them separately, how they wear. But I will say it looks really nice. Like even if I look really close up, I feel like my skin looks really flawless. The side where I use the puff definitely looks a tiny bit matter than the side where I just dabbed on the powder with a brush. But overall, both sides are looking really good, even though I just used one layer of foundation. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is I do kind of feel the product on my face. Even though it looks really natural, I still feel it a little bit more than I typically do with foundation. And so that's the one thing that's holding me back from saying that this is a complete win. The rest of the makeup has lasted really nicely on my face. I feel like my eye makeup mostly looks the same. There's a little bit of creasing kind of in the center towards my tear ducts, but that is not too big of a deal. And the blush and the bronzer have worn very nicely, especially the blush still looks exactly the same as when I applied it. The other thing I want to update you guys on is this lip. So this Armani Lip Power really surprised me. So when I first put it on, it was extremely hydrating and moist. It sort of felt like it was just slipping and sliding over my lips, and so it's kind of hard to get it to be very precise. And so as a result, I thought that this wasn't really a good product to have a pigmented shade in because it would just feather out and look really messy over time. But actually, the moment the product dries down, it actually forms this sort of film on your lips. I don't know if you guys will be able to really see, but basically my lips no longer feel like they have a really hydrating thick layer on them. Instead, it kind of feels like there's almost this like vinyl cover on my lips. It's not uncomfortable at all. It actually feels pretty good. I feel like the product sort of seals in the moisture to your lips. But the point I want to make about this sealing effect is it makes it actually a lot more durable than typically these sorts of products are. Even though it felt like a lip balm when I applied it, now it feels like pretty budge proof. So overall, I'm quite intrigued about this Armani Lip Power. I think that if you want something that is really hydrating but very long lasting and also basically just sort of sets at some point and doesn't really budge much, other than of course if you eat, I think this is actually a really great option to look into. So at least upon initial impressions, I'm really enjoying this, and I might have to pick up one of these Armani Lip Powers the next time they're on sale. So that's it for my June/May roundup. I would love to hear in the comments down below what products you guys have been enjoying the past couple months, or what products did not end up working out for you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!